Do you think strength training improves your speed? Well, I didn't. Although I got my 40 yard from a 4.9 to a 4.4 seconds, my God, did it take years, and I wish I was smarter about my strength training so I could speed up the results. And after training over 1,300 athletes, single leg squatting over 300 pounds, and running a 4.4 second 40-yard dash, in this video, I'll be able to show you how to build strength that transfers over to speed, and how to know what type of strength training you need with my strength training checklist. Part 1, what happens when you don't match the strength training to the type of athlete you are? Well, I'll show you what I've seen with athletes who didn't get this right, and how much of a difference it makes when they do. The first thing we have to cover is the type of strength training you need. Most athletes fall into 3 to 5 categories. Number 1, weak and slow. Number 2, strong and slow. Number 3, weak and fast. Number 4, strong and fast. Number 5 is injured. We won't focus on this here, but an important tip is that strength training is very important for recovery. If you're weak and slow or weak and fast, we're going to focus on relative strength training. If you're strong but slow, we will focus on rate of force development or velocity-based lifting. If you're strong and fast, or in the middle ground of average strength and average speed, which is most athletes watching this video, you'll need a mix of relative strength training and velocity-based lifting. I call this relative power training. Make sure you watch until the end, because I will be breaking down each category and show you how to focus on the right one so you can improve your speed development. But before you know that, you need to know what type of muscles actually help you move your body forward while sprinting. Number 1 is biarticular muscles, which are muscles that cross 2 joints and can generally be seen as force transmitters and movement quality muscles. Number 2 is going to be prime movers, which are big muscle groups that do the heavy lifting quite literally while you're sprinting. For the most important muscles that cross 2 joints, we have the rectus femoris, hamstring, and gastroc. You can, of course, train these in the weight room, but you'll see the most important from high-speed functional patterns and isometric training. For example, just getting stronger in the hamstring curl won't necessarily transfer to improving your hamstring function while sprinting, since the hamstring functions in a different way than the way you contract your muscles while doing a hamstring curl. Now for the prime movers, we have the iliacus, the psoas, gluteus maximus, adductors, and quads. At the end of the day, if you're doing a lot of single leg squats and hinges or compound lifts paired with glute and hip flexor dominant lifts, which we will mention later in this video, you will hit all these muscles pretty effectively. This brings us to the first part of strength training. Now that you know what muscles to train, let's talk about the weak and slow athlete, or the weak and fast athlete category. What is the foundation to athleticism? Some say genetics, others say your feet and your hips, but at the core of all athletic movements is vertical force, especially applying a high amount of vertical force in a short period of time. Research shows that sprinting requires massive forces, about 2.2 times your body weight during acceleration and up to 4.1 times your body weight at max velocity. Not only do you need to accept these forces, but you also need to redirect them, which is force absorption to force production. Some athletes with great genetics can do this naturally without even having to look at the weight room. For example, there are Olympic sprinters who have broken 10 seconds in 100-meter laser time who haven't even touched the weight room a day in their life. What they're doing is relying on years of sprinting, plyometrics, and natural talent. But if you're not that lucky, then you need something called relative strength. Relative strength is how strong you are compared to your body weight. I want you to think of it as how powerful are you, or how much force production you have, not just raw strength. If we only cared about raw strength, then the powerlifter or the 300-pound strongman would be the fastest athletes in the world, since their training would be enough. But compensating in a slow, heavy deadlift that takes a 3-second concentric will not transfer over to sprint performance, because it won't help you generate sprint-specific force. So here's how to program for relative strength that transfers over to sprints. For reps and sets, stick to 1 to 6 reps for strength. Beginners can start with 8 to 12 reps for more hypertrophy, but research shows that you can build hypertrophy with low reps as well. For sets, start with 1 set for beginners and go up to even 10 sets for advanced athletes. I usually program in the Speed Academy 3 to 5 sets of 3 to 6 reps, 1 to 3 times per week. For intensity, this is how hard you're lifting. You want to use 70 to 85% of your 1 rep max. You can easily figure out what your 1 rep max is by doing a 5 rep max and then searching up the 1 rep max calculator and getting a rough estimate of how strong you actually are, let's say in a regular bilateral squat. Then we want to lift with maximum intent. Even if the weight is heavy, we want to aim to explode up in 0.6 to 1.2 seconds. If the concentric of the lift, which is the up portion takes longer than 1.2 seconds, you're going to lose the transfer potential to sprinting. Exercises for relative strength, I like to focus on the rear foot elevated split squat, and I want to aim for 1.3 times your body weight in this lift. The second exercise will be hip thrusts. We want to target around 250 to 400 pounds in the hip thrust. Anything beyond 500 to 600 pounds will just turn into a lower back lift. I don't care if you think you're stronger than that. Number 3 is the single leg RDL. You want to go around 1.0 to 1.35 times your body weight. Number 4 is the single leg calf raise. We want to look for 1.0 to 1.5 times your body weight. And in elite athletes, we can push this even further. And number 5 would be half squats. We want to push anywhere around 1.25 to 1.5 times your body weight. And remember, this is in 0.6 to 1.2 seconds. If it takes you 3 seconds to lift, let's say 300 pounds in a half squat, then that is not the squat we want to improve your athleticism. You need to drop the weight and keep getting better over time. In my monthly newsletter, I'm about to give my 7 favorite exercises for improving your speed. So if you want to join for free, click the link in the description and you will get an email breaking down my favorite exercises, how to program them, and reps and sets. The second category for strength training hits close to home for me. I grew up with a long distance running background. When I finally decided that I wanted to sprint faster, I had no idea what I was doing. Since I was naturally slow and I had slow twitch muscle fibers from long distance running, I thought strength training would be the simple fix to all my problems. I got strong. I parallel squatted 405 pounds in high school and power cleaned over 220 pounds at 160 pounds. But the problem was I was still slow because I was lacking the quality of rate of force development. And once I trained rate of force development, my 40-yard time went from a 4.9 to a 4.4 second laser time. Rate of force development comes down to 3 things. Number 1 is power-based lifting. Number 2 is plyometrics. And number 3 is your sport. For example, sprinting against someone will develop your rate of force development. But since we're focusing on lifting in this video, let's talk about how to program for power-based lifts. For reps and sets, you want to stick to anywhere between 2 to 6 reps for 1 to 6 sets. A good example would be 4 sets of 4 for high speed. Now for intensity, you can also call this velocity or speed. We're going to use 40 to 65% of your 1 rep max, and we're lifting with max intent. The concentric phase should be 0.2 to 0.5 seconds. We should be able to lift the bar faster since the weight is lighter. If it takes us 1 second to lift 300 pounds, and then we lower it to 150 pounds, and it also takes us 1 second to lift the bar, then we're not lifting with max intensity. We need to be throwing the bar up as fast as possible to develop something called power. Now for exercises for rate of force development, we can do eccentric speed squats, half or quarter at 40 to 60% of your 1 rep max. Reversal strength squats where you use bands with 50% of your body weight. Hang cleans, power cleans, hang high pulls, speed trap bar deadlifts, speed rear foot elevated split squats, half squat or quarter squat position rear foot elevated split squats, even if you go a little bit heavier, speed hip thrusts. Then isometric lifts like the glute or ankle isometric push can also develop rate of force development because the intensity is max intent with the velocity being 0. Now the third category, what about the average athlete? They have decent strength, decent speed, but they're just not really improving. For these type of athletes, it's less about exercise selection and more about programming. Here's an example week of the Speed Academy where I'm targeting the average athlete who is probably decently strong and decently fast, but they're not extraordinary in any single area. Day 1, we want to pair speed training with acceleration strength work paired with ballistic jumps. Here's an example of the workout. Day 2, we want speed strength lifting paired with plyometrics and med ball work. Here's an example of the reps and sets and exercises we use. Day 3, we could pair joint angle specific heavy lifts, for example, like a single leg quarter squat that is 1.5 times our body weight after a ballistic sprint session. Here is reps and sets and exercises that we would use in the Speed Academy. And if you want to hop on the Speed Academy, is the #1 way to pair your strength training with your speed training. Click the link in the description or the pinned comment to join today. This approach combines speed training, plyometrics, both heavy lifting and light velocity-based lifting to make sure you're maximizing your transfer to sprint speed improvement. Now that you know what type of strength training you need for your specific journey, if you don't know how to train your acceleration properly, none of this strength training will transfer over to your speed sessions. So watch this video right here to learn everything you need to know to train your acceleration.